Hello, and in this video, we'll create this React component with Tailwind CSS and Gsap, which is at the moment the best library for animations. And so, without further ado, let's begin. Alright, we can begin by going to our desktop, creating a new folder. I'll call it Scroller, call it whatever you like, and drag and drop it into our Visual Studio Code. Let's open a terminal and run npm create vite at latest, and a dot slash at the end. Let's give this project a name, choose React, and choose JavaScript. Now, let's install all our dependencies by running npm install gsap and gsap/react. And now let's also install Tailwind CSS. Let's go to their website, their docs. Let's copy these two dependencies and paste them into our terminal and wait for everything to install. And now that everything is done, let's go to our source folder, delete app.css entirely, delete everything inside of index.css, go to app.jsx, remove the entire thing and run refc, or just manually remove everything from it, really doesn't matter. And let's make this div into a main to keep up with good syntax. And let's go back into our Tailwind CSS, copy the plugin, and copy the import for the plugin, and paste them both into vite-config.js. Next, let's copy the import for index.css and paste it there. And I believe everything is done. Let's test how the Tailwind is in fact working. Let's set a class name for min-h-screen and background of red 500. And let's run npm run dev in our terminal. And yes, the background is red. Everything is in fact working. And let's make it black for the style of our video. Inside of our main, let's create a new div, give it a class name, which will be w-screen, h-screen, bg-black. Also, let's add w-screen to the main. Let's copy this div, add another one. So we'll simply add two black screens around our component to be able to see the scroll animation better. In our source folder, let's create a new components folder, and in here, create a new file called iconsection.jsx. Let's run refc. As always, if this command doesn't work, go to extensions and type ES7 and download this extension. And let's import its components in the middle of these two divs. Let's go back to our icon section and turn this into an actual section. Let's add a class name of icons-section. This will be for our Gsap animation. W-screen, minimum height of screen, as the index of 36. Inside of here, let's create another div, give it a class name of w-full, h-full, flex, items-center, and justify-center, and flex-call. Inside of this div, we can create an h1 with our title. I'll simply type plenty of cool stuff, really doesn't matter what you type here. And let's give it a class name of icons text, padding bottom of 10, font-bold, text-white, and text-5 XL. Under this h1, let's create a new div with a class name of flex, justify-center, grid-calls-3, and gap-y of 36. This will be our container for our cards. Let's also add a w-full. Inside of here, we'll need some constants. So let's go back to our file and folder structure, go to our source folder, create a new folder called constants, and create a new file inside of it called index.js, and paste the constants into here. You'll find all of them in the description down below. As you can see, these constants are just paths to images, titles, and descriptions. Next, you can also import all the necessary images, which you can also find in the description. And so let's import the card items from constants, map them, and for each item, make an instant return. Inside of here, let's create a new div, give it a class name of icon-card. Let's give it a key of item.title, and let's type out the icon card component. We haven't created this component yet, but first, let's give it some props. These props will be image of item.image, title of item.title, and text of item.text. Now let's create a new component, which we'll call iconcard.jsx. Inside of it, run refc. Let's remove the text, give this div a class name of flex, flex-call, items-center, gap-2. Inside of it, let's create an image, and first, let's pass all of the props, which will be image, text, and title. Let's give this image a source of image and an alt of title, and a class name of size-50. Next, let's create an h2, which will hold the title. This h2 will have a class name of font-semibold, text-white, and text-3XL. Next, let's create a p tag with a class name of text-white/20, text-large, max-w-60 and text-center. Now let's come back to the icon section, import the icon card, and let's reload everything. And this is how our section will look. Seems pretty nice so far. Now we can move on to the Gsap animation. In here, let's import Gsap from Gsap. Let's also import use Gsap from @gsap/react. Use Gsap is essentially use effects for Gsap animations. Let's import ScrollTrigger from Gsap/ScrollTrigger. This is a plugin which will also need to register. So outside of our component, let's write gsap.register plugin ScrollTrigger. In here, let's create the use Gsap hook, type it out just like a normal use effect, and inside of here run gsap.from. The first parameter will be the element that we're going to target, which in this case is going to be .iconstext, which means the element with the class of iconstext. And the second input will be where we want the animation to come from. So basically it's going to come from what we put into this animation and to our location and parameters in our JSX. And so let's add the curly braces, in which we'll have a y of 200 and an opacity of 0, which means it will start invisible and down by 200 and during the process of the animation become visible and move upwards. And let's give this a scroll trigger, so it doesn't just trigger on the reload of the page. For this, let's give it a trigger, which can be any element, but in this case, we'll make it the same element as before, the icons text. And these things also need to start, which in our case, and let's not forget to add a comma over here, will be bottom center, which means when the bottom of this element be in the center of the screen, the animation will begin. And let's see how this looks. Let's reload the page. And as you can see, the animation happens just as we want. But I think it's starting from too low down, so let's make it 100. And yes, this looks much better. Now let's add the more important animations. Let's create a new variable called TL, and it'll be equal to gsap.timeline. Timelines are used when we want multiple elements to be connected in animation, either to go one after the other or to go at the same time. For this, we'll add an overall scroll trigger for the entire timeline and for all of the elements inside of it. So let's write scroll trigger, give it a trigger of .icons-section, so the entire section. Let's give it a start of top center. That means when the top of the section will be in the center of the screen, and an end when the bottom of the section will be at the top of the screen. Essentially, when we've passed the entire section. Now let's give it a scrub of 1. Scrub basically just smoothens out the scroll animation. Under this, let's say tl.from2. From2 means we're moving the animation from one state to a different state, both of which are passed in here. First, let's have the element that we're pointing to, which is going to be icon-card, 2 dots, nth child, and let's pass in the child. Basically, we're looking at this map, and we're pointing at a specific element in this map, which in our case will be the first element out of 6, so the first child out of 6. And let's pass the from. These values will be simple, so an x of 150 moving to an x of minus 135. Let's copy this and add the third child. The reason we're adding the third child is because they'll essentially be mirrored. And we don't have any animation yet, and the issue is we didn't add a dot over here, which indicates that we're pointing to a class. And let's reload this, and one of them seems to be working, the other not so much. Let's copy the first one again, paste it in here, change this to a y of 150 and move it to minus 60, and let's not forget to add a 0 after all of the parameters. 0 means all of them will be the first element in the timeline, which means they'll all go together. And now let's reload this, and both of them are moving, but we just need to change this to 2 to target the second element. And now this looks awesome. Now let's copy all of this for the second half of the component. Let's just change this to 4, 5, and 6. Let's change some of the elements to minus 100 and 100 and minus 150, and reverse the values on the y. And after loading over here, this is how components should look like. This is great. And so yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you.